Welcome to another episode of WTF. That is what the or welcome to Friday. You get to pick how your week went. I am Cheryl Pankhurst. I am a family advocate and educational strategist, podcaster, speaker, consultant, and author. And this episode is brought to you by Insight to Impact, educational strategy, family advocacy, where strategic insight means collaborative impact for families and schools. Well, thank you for listening. This is a spinoff from Parenting Teens Advice Redefined. That is the Wednesday release of expert consultants and parents and educators and psychologists and everything in between. We have some amazing experts on there that we talk about conversations that you probably didn't even know you needed, because parenting now is uncharted territory. And so we need to open ourselves up to learn as much as we can. In today's episode, follows up a couple of conversations that I have had with parents, and it's really the WTF moment. And that is, you have all the data, you got all the report cards, teachers have given you all the insight and input. So you got on the wait list with the psychologists, and you waited and you pushed and you advocated. And finally, you got the assessment. You got the psychoeducational assessment. I know that I've sat with so many parents in this exact moment when you thought you might feel like this huge sense of relief, like, oh, we finally have all the answers. And instead, you're flipping through this going, wait, what does that actually mean? Is that bad? Is this what is happening at school? This isn't happening at home. I don't even recognize the kid that's written in this paper. So what do I do with this now? No one, you make this huge investment in a fantastic tool of the psychoed assessment, but then it's handed off and no one is really walking you through it in a way that makes sense in real life, in the real classroom, at home, with friends. You open your assessment and you're seeing terms like processing speed, executive functioning, working memory. Then, of course, there's expressive language, receptive language, but there's input, but there's output. And that is all in different areas. So we might have a processing speed deficit in math, but not in English. And it's all within the 60-page document. And you are actually trying to connect that to your actual kid. This is the kid who melts down after homework. This is the one who says, I'm totally fine, but you know damn well they're not. Or this is a kid who's working twice as hard as anybody else or completely checked out. So you have this kid and this assessment and this school and this big gap in between. There's a gap between what the report says and what is actually happening in your house or at school, what you know of, what you don't know of, and no one bridges that gap for you. So when I sit down with parents, this is exactly where we start with the assessment. We don't rush through it. We don't skim through it. We go through the assessment together and we slow it right down and say things like, okay, this piece here, this is what this means in math, but this is what it might look like in English or in phys ed. Or this is what it might look like at home. Completely different arena, completely different outcome. So this is why, and this piece here, this is why your kid is coming home completely drained, cannot access 5 minutes of homework without a complete meltdown. But this is why. This is part of the diagnosis. This is not because he doesn't want to do homework. So connecting this with your kid, this is where a specific kind of support at home or at school would make a lot of sense, make a huge difference, and not just look good on paper. Because here's the thing, that report, that assessment, it's not the answer. It's an amazing tool, but it is a tool. And if you don't know how to use it, it will sit in the toolbox with all the other tools that were not effective. This is a huge investment and very much worth bridging the gap. We don't want this huge investment to just sit there. Something that really important that happens when parents start to actually understand what's happening, and it's not that you don't understand it because you don't understand it. There's terms and terminology in here that we have no idea. It's not our fault to not know. They were just never explained to us and connected it to our kid. But as soon as a parent hears, oh, that's why, and that's what it looks like, you can feel it. They exhale. And it's not because everything is solved, but because everything finally makes sense. You can stop spiraling. You can stop second guessing every single decision. You can stop walking into meetings feeling like you're either going to cry or going to throw something at somebody because you're so frustrated. Or you're worried about saying the wrong thing. Or you go home and then you go over the conversation. Oh, I should have said this. I forgot to say this. Why didn't I respond with this? Because it gets overwhelming. And when you're sitting in a school meeting, it's usually just you and then 3 or 4 team members. That can be really intimidating and hard to respond without reacting. And sometimes reacting is shutting right down in the meeting. I just want to get this over with. But when we sit down and do this work together, you get clarity. And clarity creates a calmness, an empowering feeling. You know you have a voice, and then everything changes. I remember sitting down recently with a parent who said the school just is not doing enough. And granted, that could be true sometimes. But when we actually looked at the assessment together, and we looked at the current IEP, we could see the recommendations on the assessment were very vague. There was nothing specific to. So we could take those vague recommendations and we can isolate them and unpack them into, well, this is exactly the recommendation for math, but this is what it looks like for English, and this is what it looks like at home. And when the IEP doesn't really match the assessment, it doesn't make sense. So when those two pieces are not connected, the parent is now, asking for more, but not necessarily asking for the right things. And then you have a school responding who thinks that they're giving all the right support, who thinks they're doing exactly what they've been asked, but there's a misalignment. Once you get clear on that, the whole conversation changes. Same school, same kid, completely different outcome. And this is also the benefit of having an advocate who has worked in the school system for years, so knows the parameters and the restrictions and limitations teachers might have and be able to work around. An advocate who also is very familiar for how the principal and the vice principal work and their role in these meetings, who to connect with first, who to connect with last, They understand the ministry and the board office and how those systems work. And then we also know the parents and we know the star player of the team, our kids. You may find an advocate who is willing to go in, guns a-blazing, but not have an understanding of the other side. Their goal is to get you exactly what you should have. And I understand that. And that might be the outcome. But how do you want to approach the next 4 years of high school with your kid in tow? Do we want to have to go in every semester and start throwing the human rights book at them and having a bulldog advocate going in there and just creating that kind of tension? Or do you want someone sitting at the table who understands everyone's perspective, still gets you what you should be getting, still able to support your team, but understand that now we have this whole team effort. Everyone just wants what's best for your kid. And when everyone's perspective at the table is honored and heard, it doesn't mean you don't get what you want. It means you probably start to understand that everyone just wants the best for my kid. There was just a misunderstanding. There was a misalignment. There was this disconnection between teachers and principal and IEP and assessment, and now we bridge it. So if you're sitting there right now with your assessment, or maybe it's sitting inside the junk drawer in your kitchen for the last weeks, months, and you still feel like, I just have no idea what to do with this. You're not alone, first of all, and you're not missing things that are obvious. It's just nobody taught us to do this. But this is the work. What your teen actually needs, where they struggle, what's reasonable to expect from the school, and where you might need to ask different questions. Not even better questions, just different questions. This is exactly what I do with families. We take something that feels so overwhelming and we make it make sense. So you're not guessing and you're not reacting. You're not walking into meetings hoping to God this one goes better than the last one. You're grounded, you're clear, you know exactly what you're advocating for, and your teen sees it and feels it. And what is the ripple effect there? Now your teen learns how to advocate for themselves. There's a win-win. If this is where you are right now, please don't stay stuck in the confusion. You do not have to figure this out on your own. Reach out. We will sit down together. We will go through it step by step, because your teen doesn't need you to know all the answers. It just needs you to see the landscape and understand how to connect it to them. And once you do that, everything changes. Everything you need about Insight to Impact is in the show notes. I really appreciate you listening. I have this assessment is so common. You are not alone. I promise you, and I've got you. Thank you for listening to WTF. It's been my pleasure, and I'm so grateful you're here. See you next time.